Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something pretty much every student desperately needs but honestly rarely achieves. We're talking about building a foolproof, low-resistance study system that actually fits into your real life. Okay, let's dive into this.
Think about it for a second. Have you ever sat down on a Sunday, fueled by way too much caffeine and pure motivation, and mapped out this intense 14-hour study grind schedule for the upcoming week? You know the one, where every single minute is accounted for. And then, what happens? Usually nothing. Why do those intense schedules literally never work in reality? Well, they fail because they rely on you being a perfect, emotionless robot. And let's face it, none of us are.
I absolutely love this quote from Jay Spark because it just hits the nail on the head. He says, "I don't mean those insane color-coded 6 hours a day schedules that look good on Notion but completely fall apart the moment you feel tired." Exactly, right? A real, sustainable study system doesn't demand relentless discipline from you. It actually expects imperfections, and crucially, it honors your fluctuating energy levels. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. The procrastination trap. 2. Mastering the big picture. 3. Tracking your study hours. 4. Beating daily resistance. And finally, 5. Working smarter, not harder.
All right, Section 1, the procrastination trap. Escaping the cycle of cramming and burnout.
Moving right along to Section 2, Mastering the Big Picture, Building a Schedule Around Your Life.
So before we can even begin to talk about studying, we really have to look at the macro level of planning. And that starts by acknowledging your fixed time elements. We're talking commuting, eating, working, and, this is absolutely crucial, getting 8 hours of sleep and regular recreation time. I really want to emphasize this. Scheduling time for your family, catching some sleep, and having a social life first, that is not slacking off. It is the absolute core of a balanced, efficient lifestyle. Without that foundation, your whole study plan is just going to crash and burn.
168. That's the total number of hours you have in a week. No more, no less. To find out how much time you can actually dedicate to studying, you need to take this number and subtract all those fixed hours we literally just talked about. Whatever's left over, that reveals your true, realistic available study time. And you know what? It's almost always way less than you think, which is exactly why we have to be super smart with it.
And this brings us to a massively effective technique: backwards planning. Look, when you get a major assignment, don't just start vaguely reading through material. Identify the fixed due date first. Then estimate how long each part of the task is going to take. Researching, drafting, editing, the whole shebang. Finally, work backwards from that deadline to figure out the exact date you need to start. Doing this, it means you are never, ever surprised by a deadline again. Now, what's really cool here is how a Gantt chart brilliantly illustrates this backwards planning in action. It functions as a living weekly planner. You can actually physically see how tasks for different subjects overlap with each other. By working backwards from those highlighted due dates, you're basically creating a visual map. And that map tells you exactly what phase of the project you should be in on any given week. It's a real game changer.
Okay, Section 3, Tracking Your Study Hours, Winning the Week.
All right, so now that we have our entire semester mapped out, we need to shift our focus to managing and tracking our time on a weekly basis. And this is a really fascinating comparison. On the one hand, we have goal-oriented tracking, where you schedule every single minute in advance. But hey, if you struggle with procrastination, and let's be real, who doesn't, look at the alternative. Procrastinator tracking doesn't force you to stick to some rigid future schedule. Instead, you just record your study hours in half-hour blocks as you actually complete them. This helps track your study hours to improve your overall focus, and it gives you this awesome dopamine hit of accomplishment, totally bypassing that restrictive guilt you get from missing a pre-planned slot.
Another really great weekly tool is keeping 2 completely separate lists: a must-do list and a wish-to-do list. Because here's the thing, when you finally sit down at your desk, decision fatigue is your absolute worst enemy. If you have to spend 20 minutes just figuring out what to study, you're probably just going to end up doom scrolling on your phone, right? Splitting tasks like this completely removes that decision fatigue. You literally just look at the list and immediately get to work.
Section 4, Beating Daily Resistance, Bypassing the Brain's Laziness.
So we've looked at the semester, we've looked at the week, now we're down at the micro level, dealing with the daily friction of just getting the engine started. And the absolutely crucial point here is to eat the frog. This productivity concept is all about identifying your most important, and honestly, usually your hardest task for the day, the one you're absolutely dreading, and completing it first thing. You want to front load your hardest work early in the day. Why?
because that's when your energy and willpower are at their absolute peak. But wait, what if you still just can't bring yourself to start? Well, enter the 2-minute rule. Pick a subject, set a timer for literally just 2 minutes, and start insanely small. I mean it. Read a single paragraph. Flip just one flashcard. Doing this effectively tricks your brain into action mode. Since starting is always the hardest part, once those 2 minutes are up, you'll likely find that the resistance is just gone. You'll actually want to keep going.
Now, as a great alternative to that, you can try the 10-minute rule. Commit to just 10 minutes of work. If that timer goes off and you are genuinely still too exhausted to focus, well, you give yourself permission to stop, entirely guilt-free. However, think about this. If you manage just 10 minutes a day for 6 days, that efficiently builds into a full hour of studying that you wouldn't have done otherwise. Pretty cool, right?
Which brings us to Section 5, working smarter, not harder. Maximizing your focus.
To wrap up this explainer, we really need to look at the actual science of studying, just so we can make those hard-won hours really count. Listen, if you take nothing else away today, please remember this. Active recall beats passive reading every single time. Spending 3 hours just rereading your notes, it really just pushes your brain into fatigue without retaining much at all. But if you take 1 hour to read and then 2 hours to actively test yourself with flashcards or practice questions, the information actually sticks like glue. And the best part is, we can take that cognitive science and apply it using modern tools. This data from Cranberry perfectly translates these research-backed levers into practical app features. If you struggle with distractions, just use an app blocker during your high-risk hours. Want to space out your reviews? Easy. Use a space repetition tool for just 10 minutes a day. You're basically letting the technology enforce all the good habits for you. As we bring things to a close, I want to remind you that a sustainable routine absolutely expects imperfections. You need to leave gaps in your weekend on purpose. When you're feeling totally wiped out, pivot to low-energy tasks, like maybe just organizing your notes. And please protect your sleep at all costs. Remember, an hour of focused studying every single day consistently beats a miserable, intense 5-hour marathon right before an exam. That balance is the key. It's exactly what prevents burnout. So I'll leave you with this final provocative thought. Take a look at your schedule for the rest of the day. What is your frog? What's that one difficult task you've been dreading? And more importantly, what is one tiny 2-minute task you can pull from it to start right now? Seriously, don't wait for the perfect schedule. Just set the timer and begin.